Good stuff. Okay. Right. So we've just hit the resume record at the right place then. So let's just look at a few questions. And then at the end, we might look through some calculation aspects. But for me, per se, it's going to give me a bit of a nice broad view of how well your understanding of these concepts are. And also it would be a bit of a highlight to you to see how strong and consolidated you are in some of these. So some little questions here, just multiple choice type questions, Tom, in your own time. And it would be good, of course, for you to, voice out how your thought process behind some of these questions, because, of course, that's something you will be, they'll be wanting you to demonstrate over your interviews. Okay. So can you see my screen fine?
Yeah.
Oh, excellent. Okay, great stuff. So in your own time, have a look at the question and have a little bit of a think.
Okay. So obviously film works by taking like snapshots at each time period.
Very good.
So like let's say it's like every 0.1 seconds for this. Obviously it's usually it's like films it's like 24 times 60 on like cameras, but yeah, but it takes pictures regularly.
Very good.
So at the start, you're gonna have lots of pictures of the ball in a similar place.
Yeah.
But as you get down, you're gonna have less and less pictures. Like the distance between the ball and each individual frame is gonna be more.
Correct.
So if you run the film backwards, it's gonna start off moving really fast, and it's gonna slow down as it gets to the top.
Yeah.
So in terms of acceleration, it's not gonna be accelerating upwards. It's still gonna be accelerating. It's gonna look like it's accelerating downwards. It's like you've thrown it up and it's slowing down as it gets to the top.
You're absolutely right. And so you're going for the answer is B, yeah?
Yeah.
Good, man. Excellent. And also another way to think about it and another conceptual way. Oops, let's get the right pen here. That nib is a bit too big. I'll use the red color. Very good. Excellent. Another way to think about it is that acceleration is a rate of change.
Yeah.
Yeah. So anytime you have a rate of change, so it's the rate of change of velocity, which itself is a rate of change of displacement. Yeah. So anytime you have a rate of change and you reverse time, then things will be reversed. But if you try and reverse a rate of change, then that does not change. Okay. Very good. Okay. Excellent. Very good. Strong start. Okay. Here's another one. A jar of flies. Seen this one before?
I haven't actually. I mean, I've seen things similar to it.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay, so this question is obviously about mass, right? So let's think about this. I think I'm sort of thinking about it like something that I can sort of visualize.
Yeah.
And if you're standing on a weighing scale and then you jump, the weighing scale is gonna momentarily have something really high. That'd be like when the fly sets off.
Yeah.
But obviously the fly's flapping. But I reckon when it's in the air, the mass actually isn't gonna turn up on the scale because it's not putting any force actually on the jar. It's using the air around it, and it's using the sort of air resistance to get a reaction force so it stays in the air.
Correct.
But I think it'll be most when it's actually sitting on the bottom of the jar, because I reckon when it's flying in the middle of the jar, it won't actually affect the weight.
Okay. And some good thought processes there. But if we think about it, so it says the scale will register the most weight when the flies are. So we've got this option here of whether they are sitting on the bottom of the jar, yeah, or flying around inside the jar, or the weight of the jar is the same in both cases. Now, if, of course, they are lifting off your right, it's going to register momentarily an increased amount or an increased, a higher reading, as opposed to when they are sat on the bottom of the jar. Now, when they are flying, how would that then change? How does that change the scenario to when they are sitting on the bottom? Because as you said, they're still exerting a reaction. And also, if we look at what the scale is reading, well, we can think about it in terms of the weight. Well, what is weight actually? If you think about just as a simple definition, you think of weight as being composed of product of mass.
Yeah, mass and
gravitational field strength.
Yeah.
Correct. Does the mass change when they are flying?
The mass of the system doesn't change, obviously.
Very good.
Because the flies aren't leaving the system.
Very good. So the mass of the system is still the same. Yeah. The distribution has changed, but the mass of the system is still the same. Okay. Yeah. And if I look at this scenario sitting on the bottom of the jar, yeah, the mass is still the same. of the
That's still the
system.
same. Okay.
When it's still flying around, now they've lifted off, so the mass will still be the same. So the weight of the jar must be the same in both cases.
Is that the right
That
answer then? Yeah.
Yeah, not a
Yeah,
problem,
yeah.
but at least we are, it's just to give you just a little bit more extra insights onto some of these things. Good, okay. Oh, this one, how about that one? Do vectors always add?
Right. Can two physical things represented by vectors always be represented? Some of the two vectors, the IC vectors A and B, each of the same kind of thing. Can the two things acting together be representative by the vector C? The diagonal to the parallelogram formed by A and B. In short, it's always work. Okay. So in terms of forces, like if I had a force put like of 1 Newton going up vertically,
Yeah,
and one force going to the right, then you would have a force of what √2 going in the 45-degree direction.
good.
But is it always the case? I'm probably going to say yeah. I'm trying to think of any counterexamples. If you have them working in opposite directions, then the resultant is obviously 0. But where it says the same kind of thing, it's like obviously I think for forces it works.
Yeah, forces it works, you're right. And can we think of any other vectors
that you use? Obviously displacement, but that always works.
That always works, good.
Other things to use vectors for.
Any other vectors that you know of?
I can't think of anything.
Okay, can't think of any more. Not to worry. Now, this is a bit of a deep end question because at this stage, I'm sure that you wouldn't have come across, or if you have, you've probably got just some basic knowledge of something known as angular momentum. Back in my days when I did my A-levels was a big part of the course, but now in EU, which spec are you following? Is it the AQA spec?
AQA, yeah.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, well, I teach the AQA spec as well. Normally, you only find that in engineering physics. But for example, angular momentum won't follow the same rules, but also there's something known as the Poynting vector, which is used for light. And again, that does not always follow the same rules. So it's just raising a little bit of your awareness there, but that's fine. I didn't expect you to know much on that one, but well done at least, even though you didn't know, you thought about what you knew, the examples, you knew where it works. And again, you were vocalizing the thought process. So well done. How about this one?
A strong man is pulling the string apart. Is there a force on the spring? So he's obviously he's going to be applying equal forces in opposite directions.
Yeah.
So like we're pulling the string apart. Force on the spring. Well, there's obviously energy stored in there, because the spring's extended.
Yep, very good.
And it's force is half spring constant times extension, right?
Yep.
Yeah, so it has to be a force because otherwise it won't extend, right?
Okay, some good points that you've raised, but let's just think about a force then. How do we define a force?
Force is like measured in newtons.
Good. And
it's obviously mass times gravity. A vector is it's like a component. It can be a component of something.
Yep.
Like if something has if you're measuring like a two-dimensional plane, and you can have something having a positive value in one direction and a positive in the other, and those combine to a vector, right? So it shows the distribution of that.
Correct. So if we just break this down, so we're saying firstly that it is a vector.
Oh, okay. And one's acting this way, one's acting this way, but they can't get to 0. I see. That's
so we're saying it's got magnitude and direction.
Correct.
You've kind of sussed exactly where I am going with this one. So if I ask you which direction the force is acting,
nothing. Yeah. So one is acting in the opposite, one is acting in this way. Magnitude's equal, so it's no.
Very good. So it's actually, there is no force
There's
on
no
the spring.
force.
Now that,
But
of course, if you asked other physics teachers at your school, will open up a whole can of worms in debate. If you go to your mechanics teachers, a whole can of worms will be opened up and be going, what on earth are you talking about, Tom? You're losing it just before your interview. Now, actually, it's a special type of force, and we call that a tensor. Okay, so it is not in the strictest senses of a force. It's not a force, it's a tensor. And later on in your university course, you will come across tensors. Okay, so that's just a little bit of something you can also read about on, just to glean a little bit more information on that. But of course, we simplify the analysis when we're dealing with A-level aspects, where we think of these things as forces, but strictly speaking, we're dealing with a tensor. Okay, good going. How about this? How about some Newton's laws of motion? This should say the.
Okay, let's try now. All right. So using also about pressure, the can is having force coming in from all direction when it's a vacuum. So it's sort of like the air outside is trying to crush it. And on the opposite example, it's the air that tries trying to escape from it. So if you've got a vacuum in air, you it's going to move. Oh, it's definitely not going to be moving the same direction as the. It's not going to move into. Oh no, maybe it will be. I don't think it's going to move into the right.
Okay, so we can now eliminate this.
But it's either going to go to the left or it's not going to move, I think. Which one is it going to be? So obviously the air, the air coming in from like the hole is going to be impacting the surface on the far end of the can.
Yep.
Good. And it's going to be exerting a force on the can. But I'm trying to think if there's any sort of weird things where that cancels it out. I'm going to say it's going to move to the left.
Okay, you're going to go for the left here. Okay. All right. So that's your choice. Okay, select your choice. Let's just think about how we can break down this problem, because it's not an easy problem. It's actually quite it's a bit of a stumper, this one, really. So if we had, let's imagine we had a system like so, just to break it down a little bit. Oops. And this is on wheels. Certainly we know this cart will move to the right. Yeah.
Yeah.
How can we draw an analogy of the setup we've got here, and then try and think about it in that nature? What might my model look like?
If you had like a cart underwater and you punctured a hole in it?
Yeah, so basically it would be something like this almost, wouldn't it? And you've got water on the other side. So this is my cart, and now water is gushing through. Does that make sense? Because we're thinking about this as air. Yeah. What happens in this scenario? Will the cart move?
No.
Very good. It won't move. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
And that's a bit of an analogy just to kind of break down.
Yeah, that makes sense. That makes a lot of sense.
It makes a lot of sense. And you're right. You were thinking about the person going, hang on, but I'm not too sure what's going to be happening with the forces on the other side in the air. You were kind of airing it out, but you're right. But if you kind of work it with an analogy, then it becomes a little bit more, much easier to understand. And for that reason, again, for a very similar scenario, if I had a cart, which was like this, and then I had, if you like, another segment of this, and there was water here, and this was gushing out, will this cart move? Again, that one will not move. Why? Because this force is now acting as an internal force. Yeah?
Yeah.
As opposed to experiencing an external force. Well done. So the answer for this one is C, will not be moving. Good. really tough on that one. Okay. So don't worry, but it's good. It's developing your problem solving skills where you don't have numbers, which is also something that you need as well. Good.
Right. Excellent. Okay. All right, let's see. Person starts from rest and begins to swim. Swimmer puts a certain amount of momentum into himself. And momentum into the water. Momentum is always conserved. If I've got two cars and they hit into each other, that's what we do obviously in so about it mechanics. If I've got two things hitting into each other, you can calculate the velocity of each of them if you know their masses, because momentum is going to be constant.
Correct.
And the swimmer is pushing on that water.
Good.
So he's increasing his momentum. I think it's going to be C. I think he's not going to be able to give more or less momentum to the water.
You're absolutely right there. Well done. Good. Okay. And also we can think about Newton's, in terms of Newton's third law, isn't it? So the force that he's exerting, you can always think about momentum or force in terms of rate of change of momentum. Yeah. So the two forces will be equal and opposite. And so you're absolutely spot on. Okay. Next question.
Part. First starts from rest, begins to swim. So puts a certain amount of kinetic energy into himself. Well, in this one, you can't obviously assume.
Things change a little bit here.
Yeah. Are you assuming that like friction is just negligible? Like if I were to push my hand through the water,
the fact that we said same amount of momentum into the water here, again, conservation of momentum only applies if there are no external forces.
Yeah. Okay.
Strictly speaking, of which friction is an external force. So when you do state the law of conservation of momentum, we do need to state that caveat there. Okay, but let's assume in here that the external forces are negligible. Yeah.
Okay. So.
But good question, the fact that you thought about that to say, hang on, that's a bit of a consideration there.
Yeah. Okay. So he puts a certain amount of kinetic energy into himself, and he's getting that energy from the chemicals in the muscles that he's not. So he's creating that energy himself through moving his arms. And but is he putting an equal amount into the water? That's the question. So he's obviously accelerating the water when he puts his hands through it, and he's increasing the velocity of the water, which is obviously increasing its kinetic energy. As he does that. So let's think about the energy changes. Where else can the energy go? Because obviously energy has to be conserved.
Yeah.
So if he's propelling himself forward in the water, and obviously there's nothing to lose to sound or heat or anything, then I'm probably going to say C again. Same.
Okay, it is tempting to go for C. It is tempting to go for C, but let's just think about it. So we said that the force that would be acting on him would be the force that he would also be exerting on the water. Yeah, we're happy with that. Now, maybe just to analyze the motion a little bit. So let's imagine this hand is now at the forward position, somewhere around there. Yeah, that's his new position. So he's going to be pushing this water, the water that's cupped, shall we say, because he's kind of got his hand in that cupped position. We can visualize it a little bit. That moves this distance. Yeah, and we can think about it in terms of a displacement, because of course, when we're thinking about work done, we'd be looking at the force and the displacement that the force undergoes. Okay, good. So the same force acting on him has gone through a much longer distance. So if we look at this distance compared to the distance that the water has to be pushed with that force, what distance does he travel? His relative distance that he travels. Very good. He travels much lesser distance. You're right. You're absolutely right. So he must obviously therefore be putting in more kinetic energy, because the same force has acted over a much larger distance. Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah, that makes sense.
On him. Yeah, so he's putting in more kinetic. Again, a little bit not so intuitive, this one, but with a little bit of thought, you start understanding the physics a little bit more. Okay, good stuff, Tom. How about this one? Again, still looking a little bit at momentum.
which is the most likely to knock the block over. So, and this is similar to the momentum question. It's about how much momentum's transferred. If they hit the same point, you still have the same moment of force. I think intuitively, obviously, you're going to say the rubber bullet. But think about it in terms of physics. So you want as much momentum to transfer to the block as possible. And I think in the aluminium bullet, it's more likely to pierce the bark and start losing its energy slower as it goes through, and it's going to lose sort of that energy to heat and deforming the wood. Whereas the rubber, it's much less likely to go through it, which means it's going to be more likely to knock the block over because more of its momentum more of its energy is going to get transferred into hitting the wood.
Yeah, so we can think about it that way. You've thought about it in terms of energy, but also if you think about the force, which one is going to exert a greater force on the block? The rubber bullet or the aluminium bullet?
Greater force. Well, they're also going to have the same momentum, and momentum is rate of change of force, right?
So force is rate
of change of momentum, but it's the rate of change of momentum is going to be greater for the bullet because it's going to change momentum, it's going to change velocity quicker because it's not going to have that time to go through the block. It's just going to sort of bounce off. So I think the rubber bullet's going to exert more force on it because it's
absolutely right. Greater force. You're absolutely right. So if you think about this as traveling with a velocity v and it's got a mass m, and just hypothetically, because we know it's not going to go in, let's imagine then that the collision is elastic, then I would be expecting this to rebound with a velocity of minus v. So the change here would be a total of 2mv. That would be the change in the momentum. Whereas the rubber bullet, which does not change its velocity because it pierces, as you rightly said, is going to have a much smaller change in momentum. And for that reason, there's a greater force exerted from the rubber bullet. Well done in terms of all the logics that you applied there. Good. Which is most likely to damage the block? I think you already answered that one, but
aluminium is just going to go.
The bark is going. You're absolutely right. You're absolutely right. Okay, so no contest there. Good. All right, let's have a look at this one then, Tom.
Okay, suppose an open railroad car is friction vertical downpour, push what fast car goes there. Speed, momentum, kinetic energy. I've seen very similar questions to this, but it's been a while. So let's see if I can.
Yeah. But it's good to see these things code as well, and then try and apply the principles gradually. Good.
Yeah. Okay. So momentum's conserved. The mass of if the is column vertically, it's going to give no extra horizontal velocity, and if you start increasing the mass of the of this cart, the speed's going to have to decrease because MV is going to be constant.
I love that. Good stuff. Well done, Tom. Good.
And obviously that means momentum is not changing, and kinetic energy, because it's half mass velocity squared, the velocity changing less is going to have a bigger effect, so kinetic energy is going to decrease.
Super. So that was a nicely done in less than 30 seconds. Good. How about this one?
Okay. The rain has stopped. A drain plug is open at the bottom of the rolling car. Allowed to communicate water runs out. Draining of water. Okay, so
think about this one. It's not as straightforward as the other one.
Not as straightforward as the other one. All right.
Good.
So obviously this time the mass is going to be decreasing. But the momentum is not going to be constant, because when the water hits the ground, it's going to start slowing down. It carries some of the momentum away. It's not just getting added in there. It's carrying away. So the speed, if there isn't a force on it, right? There's no force acting on it. So I don't think it can increase. Well, maybe it will. Let's think through. So I think momentum is going to decrease of the car.
Very good. Excellent.
Which means, but is it going to speed up? That's the next thing to think about.
Yeah.
So obviously, if it was going at the back, it would speed up.
Yep.
But it's going at the bottom, so it's not getting that sort of reaction force. It's getting it upwards. It'll be feeling a force upwards, but it won't be feeling a force horizontally if it's going straight down.
You're right. So the component of that would be nil, affecting it horizontally.
Yeah. So I'm going to say the speed is not going to change, and because the mass is reducing, kinetic energy is going to decrease.
Top man. And therefore, the last one is, yeah, you got there in the end. Very good. Absolutely good. Good logics there. Next one.
Okay. An object with a known mass, 1 kilo, is moving from I to double I with a known speed. 1 second. Right. Speed, but does change it. So speed's a scalar, so it's staying at the same sort of total speed.
Yeah.
But just change the direction. Is it theoretically possible to calculate how strong the force is? It acts at it does change its direction by 45 degrees, and the force can act in any direction. Right.
In this case, would the force act? Well, suppose there could be a number of forces which you can then, or the question is asking, are there a number of forces, or is there a way to evaluate what force would have created that change in velocity, so to speak? Because if we're saying the speed is the same, but the direction has changed, so there'll be a change in velocity.
Okay, so looking at vectors here. So if it's moving with a 1 meter per second horizontal, and then it's going to be going with a 1 meter per second at a 45-degree angle.
Good.
We can calculate that the horizontal and the vertical components of that velocity, which are a squared equals b squared plus c squared. So a equals a square. I was trying to think what adds together to give a 1. What squared add what squared equals 1.
Yes.
It seems simple. It'll be something, but yeah, that you could figure out the horizontal and vertical components that you need to do that. So if you have a force,
but that will still be in terms of velocity, so to speak, won't it?
Yeah. Because you can have a horizontal vertical component. It's like the rate. It's like the rate of change of displacement in the x and the y.
Yeah.
And this force comes in, and it needs to reduce the horizontal velocity by a set amount and increase the vertical by a set amount.
Yeah.
Force. Yeah, I reckon it's doable. Because you need to find a force that can act in a way where it can increase the thing's motion by a certain point in one direction, a certain value in one direction, a certain value in the other direction. So I think, yeah, it's possible.
Okay. Well, let's just think back to the formula for force, where we know that it's the rate of change of momentum. Yeah. So it comes in with a certain amount of momentum, and it leaves with a certain amount of momentum.
Mm-hmm.
So my force, if I'm using, of course, that's a vector equation because force would be a vector. Strictly speaking, momentum is a vector. That's my scalar. Yeah. So if I'm thinking about it in terms of the vectorial change, so we're working with vectors, what then should determine the force? For me to know the force.
You don't know the time, yeah.
And how would this time be affected if so let's imagine this was a curved path and compare that to, say, a sharp-ended path. I better use a different color. So imagine this was a sharp edge. Yeah. How the two forces compare, where you've got an abrupt, if you like, a sharp corner, compared to where you've got a curved corner. How the two forces in the red, for example, compared to the force that would act over the curved path?
So curved path, it'll be a lower force acting over a longer period of time, whereas the red, it'll be a higher force acting over a short period of time. But if you
think about it though as well, that time that it would act over, that time would be infinitesimally small, wouldn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah. So if that time is really small, I would almost need an infinite force.
Yeah.
Very good. And actually, that is why in nature, when you find things that are designed in nature, You never see lots, even branches with very sharp edges. Well, because the water molecules have to pass through and all sorts. Instead, what do we see? We see slightly curved edges at the corners. Okay, and that is for the whole reason of trying to. So without knowing the time, and this time can be affected by the geometry of that junction, it is impossible to actually calculate what force has led to that.
So when you have like a metal ball hitting like a metal sheet and it sort of seems to bounce off, is that just a tiny amount of time and a big force?
It is absolutely, it's a tiny amount of time and it's a huge force. You're absolutely right. Yeah.
But if you wanted to instantly change it, you need an infinite amount of force. So it could be actually a proper. Yeah. It was when it hit, it would slightly deform, and it would be instant. Okay.
You're absolutely right. Good. We got there as well. That was a nice one, just to kind of bring back some of these ideas. But in general, what I'm getting the sense and feeling is that you actually have a good conceptual understanding of the key ideas that you need to be going in with the interview. Here's a bit of another one. Let's just insert blank page after current. Okay. So let's look at two scenarios here. And we've got a pulley. Let's imagine my mass here is 10 kilograms, for argument's sake, and I have 20 kilograms. Yeah. So there is a weight of 20 newtons. 200 newtons, I beg your pardon.
200, well,
sorry,
ish.
200 newtons, ish, depending on where you are, whether you're up in the Himalayas, okay? All right, so we'll approximate it to about 200 newtons or so, okay? And we're going to assume a few things about the pulley, things like it's massless and it's frictionless and such, all right? So that doesn't change, so the usual assumptions we make when looking at mechanics. I decide to then say, hang on, I will now have the same system, but I'm going to use my hand to apply a constant force of 200 newtons. Same as there, 200 Newton force applied. A and B. How do the accelerations compare in the two cases of block B, assuming everything else is the same? Coefficients of friction, literally everything else is the same.
Everything else is the same.
Yeah.
Okay.
How do the accelerations compare?
Interesting. I mean, intuitively they're the same.
Yeah. Okay.
But there's probably someone else that I need to spot.
Okay.
So in the 20 kilogram block, it's 200 newtons of tension in the I'm guessing inextensible string.
Correct, inextensible strings, all the usual assumptions you would have made during mechanics M1, M2, and so on and so forth.
Okay, so there's a constant. Is there a constant force of 200 newtons? That's the question. Well, if it's in free fall, there's none. There's no force, right? If you would, or maybe there is. So I think the hand pull, where it's a constant 200 newtons pulling on the string at all times, is going to be a higher acceleration. Because the 10 kilogram block has 200 newtons acting on it at all times. I use
the weight of this change. Does the 200 Newton weight change?
The 200 Newton weight. As it's moving down, I mean, I think intuitively in my head when I'm thinking about it, sort of, it's if you were to have like a weight here and you were to start moving it down like this, once it was equal to 9.81, it would have zero force.
Yeah.
So here we go. So as the block's going down, that sort of value that you have to times the mass by, that gravitational acceleration, as it approaches 9.1, as it approaches the acceleration of 9.1. I know, but that's an acceleration, not velocity, is it? It's not like it's not some sort of universal velocity. Um, it's friction. Is it friction on the surface? Yeah.
Frictionless surface, yeah.
Yeah. Um, so as that block's going down, it's gonna accelerate the 10 kilogram block because it's pulling 200 newtons of force on it. But is that force going to change as no? I'm going to say the forces are the same because
So acceleration is the same.
yeah,
Okay,
yeah,
and I know the whole point about these questions, Tom, as you figured out, is to just make you think and put you in situations that are slightly unfamiliar to your normal standard A-level exam type of question. Yeah, it's really to kind of put you in a slightly different zone. So maybe to help you a little bit here, do you want to apply F equals ma, Newton's second law, to these situations, and would that
force
maybe
equals
shed
mass
a
times
little bit more
acceleration.
light?
All right. So the
So in this case, what
acceleration
would,
is force over mass.
yeah, good.
Um,
So A equals F over M. And of course, we can add some forces. We can draw a free body diagram of this area here, of that area there.
oh,
We do that if you
okay.
wish to.
So in the first one, you have a 20 or 30 kilos of mass of the total system, and the force is 200.
Yeah.
Um, but in the second one, you have 10 kilograms of mass and you have 200 newtons as well. So the acceleration for the first one is 200 over 30, which is something. But for the second one, it's 200 over 10. So it's going to be 3 times as big as B.
Yeah, and good way of analyzing. You've absolutely done the right thing. And of course, the other thing you could have done is you could have, of course, expressed the tension there, and then you'd have said 200 minus T is going to be equal to my
Yeah.
20A. Yeah, absolutely, which is exactly what you've done, and that tension there, and you'd say T would be equal to 10A. Yeah, so to speak, in that case. You're absolutely right. So that one, but again, it's not intuitive because you don't generally, well, these are not the kind of questions you get in mechanics. Okay, right. Okay, right. Good stuff. Good stuff. Okay, so we've done a lot of conceptual type thinking problems. Let's do some calculation or type problem. Yeah, and so I take it at the moment you have learned about in school. You've learned about circular motion, projectile motion, simple harmonic motion.
Yep.
Yeah. Have you learned about gravitational fields?
Yeah, we just done that like a couple of weeks ago. And we're on
Okay,
electric
good.
fields now, yeah.
Oh wow, you guys are absolutely cruising. We get to get there, but we will be getting there soon. Okay, good stuff. And also, of course, there's some of the things you've been doing in mechanics. I'm sure at school, plus your further pure maths as well, which will be pretty handy as well. So let's look at this problem here. So if you had a problem like this. Now, of course, I'm just trying to think. Do you have? No, you don't have a visualizer. You don't have a visualizer, do you?
I can point my camera down there.
Oh, great. Yeah. That's absolutely, because that's something you may have to do on the day of your interview, actually, Tom.
Yeah. Well,
You
yeah,
know,
they emailed me saying I could use the Zoom whiteboard if I
yeah,
want to.
yeah. You could use that as well. You're absolutely right.
I got my notepad.
Yep.
And a blank page here. See if I can get this set up for us to see. There we go. I'll see. Is that quite bright?
Yeah, that's absolutely fine. And what I'm going to do is I will take myself off the image, and then that way I can expand.
It might be quite
But
bright.
then if I expand that, you might just not. So once you've got, oh, actually, I know what you could do. What you could do, Tom, of course, is you could take a screenshot of this somewhere. And then what I could do is I can have a look at your working in real time. Should I move this to the side? And then you can take a screenshot of the question if that helps.
Yeah, okay.
Okay.
All right, got it. Just paste it on Word.
Yeah, why
Good.
not?
All right.
You got it?
Got it.
Stuff superb.
There we go.
Good.
Okay, so would you like to put the thing down?
Yeah, why not? It would be nice. Just gives me a bit of
It
an
might be
idea of
quite
where you're
bright.
going with it. No, that's
Let's
absolutely
see.
fine. I can
Let's switch around to you.
I can make out what you're writing there.
Okay, cool.
I could see before, and it's just kind of gone.
The camera's being.
I'll tell you what you could do as well. Yeah, I'll tell you what you could do. The other thing I'm just thinking that could be done as well, Tom, because it shouldn't take a long time at all, is once as you're working through it, you know, you can obviously tell me what's going on, and then you can just send a quick picture via from your phone through to my Gmail account, and then I can bring it over, and then we can have a look at some of the aspects you've got there.
Okay.
Yeah, but at the moment,
Yeah.
I can definitely see your writing now. I think we've got much better lighting.
Yeah. I think with my hands there, it goes bright. If I move it,
oh yeah, you're right. Yeah, suddenly it's like, oh, what's going on? I'm thinking the photons are playing tricks on our eyes here. Yeah. Okay. No worries. I'll do my best to see what I can, Tom. And because you will be talking through what's going on or what you're doing, I'll have a general idea of where you're going with it.
Okay. So friction is negligible. So
yes, correct.
I think the way I'm going to start thinking about this question is I'm going to probably think about it in terms of energy first.
Very good.
Kinetic energy. Because that way you don't have to do all the circular motion and think about the forces.
Very good. Very good.
So the kinetic energy at the bottom, when h is 0, at the very bottom of this curve, is going to be equal to the mass of A times by G times by original H.
Very good.
Like that. So that's going to be the gravitational potential energy of the ball.
Good.
And you're supposed to be finding the velocity of the ball at the highest point of its trajectory. So it goes down a groove and passes into a circle of radius h over 2.
Yeah.
So the diameter is h.
Correct.
Which means that it goes h off the ground. At the top, it's h off the ground. Okay. Which would make me think that it's 0 and it's going to roll up and it's going to stop and it's going to drop. But is that right? So the ball's going to exert a force on the outside of the circle.
Yeah.
As it rolls around it. It's going to be going circular motion. So I think what I might do to start off with is just simplify it to this circle here.
Okay.
Because here it has a kinetic energy of mgh.
Yeah.
This is equal to half v squared. So the velocity is the square root of 2gh. I think I've done that right.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's the velocity.
Square root of 2gh, spot on.
This is the velocity of the ball at that point.
Good.
And it's moving around the outside of the circle. Okay. So as it moves up around the outside of the circle here, it's going to be converting its kinetic energy back into gravitational potential energy.
Yeah.
So the highest it could possibly go is the very top of the circle. it couldn't go like back
Yeah,
round.
it couldn't essentially loop the loop, as it were.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it couldn't loop the
Now,
loop.
you probably from your A-level physics or maybe mechanics, have you ever undertaken a calculation to work out what the minimum height would have to be for the ball or the mass or the body to actually loop the loop?
I don't think we have,
Yeah,
but we've done something that we've done is talking about the velocity that you need to give to this ball in a pendulum
yeah.
for it to loop the loop
Okay.
like that.
So I'll help you out a little bit here, and you can always verify this yourself, or we can go through it at some stage. But if you wanted to loop the loop, and let's imagine, so I'm not going to go through to the derivation. Let's just imagine this has a radius r. Then this height here must be 2.5 times r for it to loop
Okay.
the loop. Okay.
Okay. So it's also not going to go all the way around then.
Very good. So I've given you that there. So it's not going to go all the way around. So the problem is slightly more involved than it getting to the top height.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay.
Good.
So where is that energy going? I can't remember the circular motion equations.
Yeah, I'll give you a hand. So you've got F equals mv squared of r.
Mm.
Very good. And of course, you can also think about this in terms of angular velocity.
Velocity, yeah. That
Right.
one is mw squared r, right?
Very good.
Or whatsoever this one is, rads per second.
Correct. Yes.
Oh. Okay. So its velocity I've already found is this.
Yes, and that's at the bottom point.
So its force is equal to m root 2gh squared over r, which is just 2 mghr over r, like that.
Yeah, but
That's the force.
when we're at the bottom, we need to think about a little bit about what's going on.
Oh, and gravity as well, right?
Very good, because you've got the weight, haven't you?
Yeah.
Mg,
Weight.
and then of course you're going to have the reaction. Yeah.
Yeah, the reaction force.
Yeah.
Okay. And this is the centripetal force, right?
Correct.
Yeah. So it's the force acting sort of in line with the center of the circle.
Correct.
But because it's a reaction force, it's going to be going towards the middle of the circle as well.
Yeah.
Um.
So of course, if you had something moving around in a loop, I think you've got that expression. I can't just fully make it out on your screen, but if it was at the bottom, you would have, of course, the reaction. Yeah.
Yeah.
From the inside, and of course, we would also have our weight. And if we use
And at the
Newton's
top, yeah,
second law, you agree it would be r minus mg, which would be equal to mv squared over whatever that, I've used reaction as r. I'll use n as the reaction, because so n minus mg over mv, n minus mg equals mv squared over r, where r would be the radius. That's at that bottom point. Yeah.
mm-hmm.
And this is from simple F equals ma. Good.
Okay.
Is that what you had at the bottom? It's an interesting one, because I'm obviously seeing the work kind of upside down. So I'm trying to work out where we are. Don't worry. Yeah. Otherwise, no, don't worry. It's not. I will do my best. I want your life to be already easy. You're already having to think about the problem. So just
okay.
You go through, and I'll make sense of what's taking place.
So you got this ball, the bottom of the circle.
Yeah.
So I'm just going to draw the circle as a circle, because we've already calculated the from the ramp.
Yeah.
But the ball with moving at a velocity but I don't think that really matters. But the velocity of square root of 2gh.
Yeah.
And we know that the this mv squared over r is 2mgh over r.
Okay.
At the bottom of the circle.
Okay. Good.
And that is equal to n minus mg at the bottom of the circle.
Yep.
Okay. Okay. So at the top of the circle, you're going to be having this gravity force, no reaction force helping it out.
Good.
Mg purely going towards the bottom of the circle.
Okay.
So it's not going to be able to then stick. Mg is going to be greater than but V changes. V it's going to be greater than 2 mgh over r.
Yeah.
But h changes. Yeah, that makes sense because okay. So as the height of the ball changes, it's going to start losing speed, losing reaction force.
Good.
Obviously mg is going to stay constant, acting downwards the whole time.
Yep.
And for it to stay on the surface of the circle, there's going to need to be at least some component of it acting on the surface. So n is going to need to exist. There's going to need to be some sort of reaction force on the surface of the circle.
Correct.
Okay. And obviously for the first quarter, it's possible to be mg.
Yeah.
But after that, it's not.
Correct.
So let's use this factor you said where it was 2.5.
Mm-hmm.
And this is 2r or r is the radius of the circle.
So the height is 2r.
Yeah, the height is 2r. Let's think about that. Right, so I originally said here that mgh was the velocity, or the square root of 2gh was the velocity.
Yeah.
Well, that's where h is equal to this original height.
Correct.
Yeah, it's not the current height. I can't actually use that to model that as the current height.
Very good.
Because otherwise at the bottom it would be 0.
Well done for spotting that, Tom.
So this value using this example is the square root of 2g or times by 2.5 r.
Yeah.
V, which is 2 times 2.5 is 5 gr. That's the radius of the circle. G is gravity. And that's going to be the velocity at the bottom. Okay. I don't think that really helps this problem, but it's interesting.
Absolutely, and the whole point about some of these problems as well is they bring out interesting things that you probably haven't spotted. Yeah, okay, but that's good.
So let's rewrite the question. We talk about the velocity of the ball at the highest point of its trajectory. That's what we're thinking about.
Yeah.
So it's going to break the groove when the reaction force is equal to 0.
Very good.
And the reaction force is equal to mv squared over r plus mg.
Good.
That's at the bottom though, right?
That's at the bottom, yeah.
Yeah, but mg is gonna at the top it's gonna be minus mg, and at every other point it's gonna be sine or cos mg.
And you're right, at the very top you're talking, yeah? You mentioned.
Yeah, the very top it's going to be.
You're absolutely right. You're absolutely right. It would simply be, you're right, mg then would equal to mv squared over r. Okay, that's where you're coming from. Okay.
So the component of mg is going to be, it's going to be a 1 at 0 degrees and 0 at 90 degrees and -1 at 180 degrees. So cos starts at 1. So that's probably cos theta there. Okay. I think. Oh, this at least models the gravity.
Your theta is with reference to which?
The ball compared to the center of the circle.
Okay.
So this angle is theta.
Okay.
Because here it's going to be 180, so it's going to be minus mg. Okay, yeah, that works. Interesting. Okay. And it's when that equals 0. At what velocity will that equal 0 is the question. So it's but V's not constant either.
No.
You can't just say, yeah. R and G are constant, but correct. Theta and V are changing. And obviously N is changing as you go correct. Around the circle. Okay. It's a tricky one, actually. We've not really done much like this at school.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Yeah, and you're probably not going to see much of these at school. I'd be very surprised if you saw a lot of these at school. But they do bring in, there's quite a lot of ideas that are being brought in here. But I see that you've really put some good thought to it. And of course, with a little bit more time, you probably would start thinking about other ideas, how to simplify the problem, which is key for me to see, what are the thought processes. And you made the right start here in thinking about energy to simplify your problem. So you've absolutely on the money there when it comes to these things, because energy generally simplifies the problem. Now, of course, knowing this little fact here does help, but if you are stuck, of course, this is a little fact that you would be told, and hence why I thought, let me give you this little fact, because then at least instantly, it's not going to get to the top, it's going to come off somewhere before it gets to the top. Okay, so just to almost simplify your diagram. I like the fact that you've put out your sketches there, and oops, let me get my pen. Maybe just to simplify the problem a little bit, we can think about having, let's imagine it flies off. So this is the ball in its motion, and when it gets to this point, it comes off. Yeah, so it's going to come off with a certain velocity v. And let's imagine that the angle, if I drew a line to the point where it comes off and the horizontal, would be called theta. Might that then simplify my analysis of the problem in terms of looking at it from an energy perspective? So at the point, so let's just think about energy now with this scenario where we have an angle theta now. How will the energy equation look like by comparing the energy starting point to the energy at the point where it comes off?
So they're going to be equal, but at the point it comes off, obviously it's going to have some kinetic energy where at the start had none.
It's going to have some kinetic energy. You're absolutely right. Good. It's so going to have kinetic energy at this point. You're absolutely right, Tom. And it's also going to have potential energy.
Yeah, and obviously you cannot say then it can go all the way up again, because if it went all the way up again, it'd have to have no kinetic energy.
Correct.
Because it would have to, because you obviously can't get out energy out of nowhere.
Good.
How does that simplify the problem? Let's figure it out.
Well, now you know. Now you know the height. Now you know the height at which this happens. You know the height above the ground at which that happens. So you can work out the gravitational potential energy, can't you?
How do you know the height?
Well, we can work out the height in terms of theta.
Oh, in terms of the theta.
Because we know this is a radius.
Oh, is that? Are we allowed to put the answer in terms of theta, or is that?
Oh, no. We're going to have to actually find a value for v, but at least this is just a way of trying to find or simplify. We might be able to find another equation that will eliminate theta out of the problem altogether. But it's just giving us a starting point. It might complicate things, it might simplify things. But we have looked at, or we went down the path where you were trying to analyze it from looking at it from a theta that's measured from the bottom. But then you had two things that were changing there, as you said, theta and V, and how to find the relationship. So you measured your theta from this vertical position, is that right?
Yeah, yeah. Well,
Yeah.
that was as a component of like mg times that theta is a component of mg acting as a reaction force on the ball.
Yeah.
On,
so
like,
I've just said, let's try and take theta from the horizontal axis to the point where, so in this case, what might your equation look like?
For the velocity?
Yeah.
The...
So we've got mgh at the start. So how much energy do we have here?
mgh.
Correct. What about over here now?
We have, well, let's say the height it leaves is h2. So it's half mv squared is the kinetic part of it.
Half mv squared, well done.
Plus mg constants, but this new height that it comes off, and that's equal to mgh1.
Okay, you can call it mgh1, correct? We can call this h1, mgh1, you're right. But what is h1 in terms of, remember h over 2 is my radius. And if I'm given
in terms of theta, yeah.
What would this h1 be?
It's got this theta, this is h over 2. So sine is opposite over hypotenuse, so we're finding the opposite. Because I've done it, so you've done it like this is h.
Yeah.
But I think this is also equal to h. Like if you just draw a vertical line down.
Yeah.
So it's
you're right. So you've done it this other way. That's fine.
Yeah.
Good.
So sine theta equals our value h1 over a half h.
Good.
So 1/2 h sine theta equals h1.
Okay, well done. So you've got now the EP term is mg h sine theta over 2. Is that what you have? Very good.
Yeah, a half mv squared plus a half mg h sine theta.
Well done. Good. That's a very good position we're at now. Good. Now, how can we find another equation where we can eliminate this sine theta? Because if we're going to eliminate this sine theta,
it's
term was introduced, then life will become a little bit livable with. So what are the equations, or what are the ways can we think of that might help us get rid of that sine theta? Or how can we find this angle of sine theta?
How can we find the angle? It's interesting. So I think it's probably something to do with circular motion.
Good. Again. Very good. Very good. You're absolutely right. So the next step here that we would think about, because we've exhausted energy now, would be circular motion. That's the next kit in our toolbox, circular motion. Yep. Right. Now, I have gone a little bit over my time, Tom, but I think I've left you in a position where you've got some food for thought. Do you want to have a little think about this one? And then tomorrow when I see you, we shall just pick up a few pieces on it, see how you got on with it. Okay. And then we shall look at some of the aspects in your personal statements, where I shall do some further probing in terms of some of the things you've written in your personal statement. How does that sound?
That's good, yeah.
Yeah, okay. I'm sorry we didn't get to the end of this, but I know it's like a challenge. And so this will be something that you have, you're going to scratch your head over, and you'll probably get a lot more from it. when you're going through it in your own time. And of course, these are the other things that we need to think about in that interview. There's going to be that time pressure as well, which you don't always have, say, when you're given that problem, say, in a homework setting or in a class setting. Okay. But I think you've done extremely well today, Tom, in terms of vocalizing how you're thinking. Your understanding of the concept seems really, really sound. And of course, even some of the questions that were being asked, were really, really tricky. Even, the best students would also struggle with those questions. And I'll tell you that even some of the best students, even at my school, who have also got interviews coming up next week, they've had those questions before and they have found some of them pretty challenging. So this is not something for you to think, oh, I've got lots of gaps. No, I don't think you've got lots of gaps, because some of the really complex questions, you really showed me a very good trend of thought, how you connect your logic together, which is superb. How did you find the session today?
Oh, I loved it. Yeah, it's been really good. Sort of going to sort of think about the sort of interview questions that I could be asked.
Yes, good.
Yeah, getting me aware of how the questions are going to be asked.
Yes.
And, like the questions like this sort of things I've never seen before. Like a lot of the questions you get in exams are sort of repeats of questions you've learned before.
Correct. You're absolutely right. And once you've done 1,000 papers, you pretty much know all the variations. But these are not, so to speak, questions with that have been derived from typical variations. These have a little bit more. They're a little bit more involving. But yes, I hope you have a little bit of fun with this one. I'm sure that after an A4 page or two of scribbles, you'll get to something meaningful, and we'll look at it tomorrow. Okay.
Thank you very much. I'll see you tomorrow then.
See you tomorrow, Tom. And enjoy the guitar as well. I'm going to play some guitar tonight. Right. See you then. And I'll send you the video, Tom, and the board work as well, as promised. Okay. So you should get those in about the next half an hour or so, just for me to compress and set everything in the right format. Is that all right?
Yes, perfect.
Good stuff. See you, and
cheers.
Have a lovely one. Well done on the good work today. See you soon.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye now. Ta-da. Bye.